Welcome to 60 Skills. What is the 0-point method? The 0-point method is a method by which a practitioner can separate their mental body from their physical body to facilitate mental wandering. At a certain point, a related technique can be utilized for astral travel, but as has been discussed in this curriculum many times, mental wandering and astral travel are really vastly different things. That said, for those of you who have struggled for years to engage in an out-of-body experience and failed, this is also the technique for you. Quite simply put, people who are exceptionally well-grounded and very much in connection with their body frequently have a very difficult time engaging in mental wandering. This technique does not use the head to project the consciousness from the body. This is the typical way that most schools attempt to do this. And if somebody is exceptionally well-grounded, if their energy sticks very close to the astral, separating their mental body out can be quite difficult. That said, 0-point exercise utilizes the solar plexus instead. And by utilization of the solar plexus, this facilitates for a much easier method by which you can transfer your consciousness. As such, people who have practiced the transference of consciousness exercise, as well as the grain of sand exercise, will find that in many ways this is simply a deeper or more elaborate way of engaging in that. Now, as was mentioned in the requirements, to do this, you are going to need to be able to perform the 3 releases or the 3 transformations, as well as establishment of equilibrium. This establishment of equilibrium in particular seems to be the most important part for very well-grounded people to project their consciousness. This may in fact be a result of an excess of earth element in the body. It's really quite hard to say. But the fact of the matter is, this technique will work for people for whom all of the other conventional techniques have failed. And I say that not from a theoretical standpoint, but from the standpoint of somebody that tried for years to use conventional out-of-body projection techniques and failed at them. At best, it was taking me 2 to 4 hours a day of consistent practice with those techniques to have any kind of projection at all. Whereas now, after a certain amount of time, I can basically do this at will. So the 0-point technique is out-of-body projection for people who cannot out-of-body project. It does have a variety of requirements that are substantial in nature, but it will work for anyone. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss the role of the astral temple in the 0-point exercise. As was mentioned earlier, the 0-point exercise involves a projection into the solar plexus by which a practitioner can separate their mental body from their physical body. And since this is the primary use that most people have for this exercise, it is the one that will receive the most attention in this course of instruction. That said, there is a secondary application that over the long term may in fact even be more important. Performance of this exercise results in a practitioner being able to establish their own personal temple space at the astral level. The advantage to this is that it is also grounded within their astral body and their physical astral and astral mental matrix. This results in an astral level temple that a practitioner can take with them. It becomes portable. And most importantly, it is something that you don't need a fixed place to practice from. So for those of you who have a more itinerant or wandering lifestyle, this is a very useful tool because it will allow you to enter a sacred space within your own body that you can take with you anytime you want. This is also a technique that over the last couple thousand years has received a lot of use by people who have been incarcerated by the state for long periods of time or otherwise held prisoner and been unable to establish their own temple space. So many of you will find this very, very important. The advantage of a temple space is the astral is one place where energy developed from yogic and meditative practice can be stored to be retrieved for use at a later point in time. While many schools make great use of the flow-through method, or running energy through the body that is pulled from the universe, or at the higher level from the Akasha, the simple fact of the matter is having a storage space for energy can be very valuable. Now, depending upon how this is done, other people may or may not pick up on a sense of power surrounding a practitioner. Some schools have techniques for mitigating this, others just don't care. But the bottom line is, this technique will allow you to build your own sacred space. It is essentially a pocket world on the astral plane. And where this becomes important is, as has been mentioned many times throughout this course, the big secret of magic is anything visualized and generated strongly enough, long enough on the astral plane, assuming it is in fact physically possible, and you are willing to do the corresponding work on the material plane to support it, will occur. So, simply said, if you generate something on the astral plane, it will manifest on the physical. So this is another advantage of having your own personal temple space. It supercharges your ability to act as a magician, or, if you wish, a creator in the real world. So this technique has a variety of uses, and it's debatable as to which is more important. But to be able to do this, you have to be able to access the astral realm first, and this requires you to be able to separate your consciousness from your body. In this regard, the 0-point method is hard to beat. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss why the 0-point method works. As was mentioned early on in this course, the 0-point method was traditionally utilized to generate an out-of-body experience for people that have great difficulty with this. Reasons for this vary, but in my experience, particularly people who are very well physically grounded or very well physically connected in their body tend to have a great deal of trouble separating their mental body from their physical body. If you are using a construct by which you are leaving directly from the head, this is essentially skipping a level in the energetic transference. You're going from a vital or physical level directly to the mental level. For people who are well grounded, their mental, astral, and physical bodies are exceptionally well connected by their astral physical and astral mental matrices. So skipping a step makes it very difficult for them to pull those apart and separate it out. On the other hand, if you move the point of projection to the solar plexus and directly to the astral body, it doesn't do that. And because the astral body branches into both the mental body and the physical body, it tends to make this much easier. That's one aspect of why this technique has a high success rate, or let me rephrase that, a guaranteed success rate for people who've traditionally had issues with this. Other factors include that when performing this technique, you will also be beginning the technique by generating equilibrium using the 4 elements. As a simple, basic case in most cases, people who are exceptionally well grounded tend to have a lot of earth energy in their body. It's one of the reasons why they're very good at doing physical things and have exceptional memories, because they ground everything down into the physical naturally. But because the majority of their energy has a condensing aspect to it, loosening those bodies to release the mind from the body is rather difficult. That said, by establishing equilibrium elementally, fire in the head, air in the chest, water in the abdomen, earth in the legs, this reestablishes the proper balance of the elements within the body, even if just for a short period of time. More importantly, it establishes a proper equilibrium or counterbalancing effects between the electric and the magnetic fields or fluids within the body. This is taking that person who's exceptionally well grounded from a more earthy or more magnetic internal energy to making it more electric, even though in fact you're really just reaching balance. At this balance point, that state of equilibrium, that is quite literally where all magic happens. At this point, the bodies open up fully, the tissues in the body relax, the physiology relaxes, and at that point, that's where people can separate their mental body from their physical body. People who are naturally ungrounded don't tend to have much of a problem with this. As was stated earlier, people who are exceptionally grounded do. And I can tell you from personal experience, this was the technique that allowed me to master my out-of-body projection. And more importantly, it eventually allowed me to project out of the head. Additionally, the solar plexus works as a kind of gateway to akasha in the physical body. This is not something that is particularly well understood, but it is one of the reasons why dysfunctions of the body involving the solar plexus are so frequently fatal. The simple fact of the matter is that part of the body generates a lot of physical level akasha, and this can in turn generate a lot of problems if someone is not prepared for that. So again, by generating lots of physical level akasha, an individual then makes it much easier for them to separate their mental body from their physical body. Once again, this aids out-of-body projection. So when using the 0-point technology, the reason why it works is, one, it addresses a nascent or natural elemental imbalance in the body. Two, it allows a practitioner to work with their own innate physical level akasha. And three, it teaches the body how to relax properly. So again, these are all really good and valuable things, but this is the reason why this technique will work where all others have failed. So let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss what you may find when using the 0-point method. As was mentioned earlier, the 0-point method allows a practitioner to establish an astral level temple within their own body, or, if you wish, allows a practitioner to access a pocket world on the astral plane using the solar plexus. Either way, you are essentially going to a place on the astral that is not constrained by the element of time. As has been mentioned many times in this coursework, that is the foundational characteristic of the astral plane, this sense of timelessness. Now, in fact, that's not entirely true. Time does functionally exist on the astral plane in a very limited and unusual manner, but for all practical purposes, it doesn't. And for our purpose, this becomes important. Whether people choose to believe in reincarnation or not, or whether they choose to believe in past lives or not, is largely irrelevant. As one of my teachers once told me very bluntly, gravity will kill you just as easily if you believe in it or if you don't. And such as it is with much involving metaphysics and esoterica in general. The reality is people lose sight of the physics part of the equation, where we're simply trying to describe the world given a lack of concrete tools to employ to do so. So when you project into your solar plexus the first time, and you go down into that internal astral level temple, you may find some things there. You may find some things that are a little confusing. You may find a bunch of things that look like you. You may find prior incarnations. You may find a very well-developed temple complex already there waiting for you. It really depends upon the individual. And again, it will vary quite a great deal based off of your belief system, because your belief system will directly flavor what you can in fact perceive. But as a simple matter of fact, if you've gotten this far in the training in the 60 Skills program, there is a very high likelihood you have done this kind of training previously in other lives. Most people who have this kind of ability prepare some things for themselves in the future. So by projecting into this astral level temple, you may end up finding out quite a great deal about yourself that you had either suspected or wondered about for a very long period of time. This is an additional benefit of learning this technique. Now, that said, one thing you should keep in mind that is very important. The life you are living right now is the only one you get right now. Whether prior incarnations set things up for you to operate a certain way in previous lives, whether you maybe made some deals in previous lives, whatever that may be, the fact of the matter is you have free will in the here and now. So if you find something in there that you're simply no longer in agreement with or not in agreement with at all, you are under no imposition to continue down that path. Just because your prior incarnation was a famous herbalist in the Qing dynasty doesn't mean you have to do that again. That was just what you chose to do in that life. Now, that's not to say changing your mind might not be complicated or take a lot of effort. I can't get you out of that. But what I am saying is, don't surrender your will to this sense of fate. This is a classical mistake many people make in metaphysics, and in fact is highly counterproductive. The reason for this is simple. The world changes a lot between incarnations. As someone who is trained as an historian, I'm here to tell you, the world of more than 100 years ago would be barely recognizable to most people walking around today. They would be completely unable to understand the motivations of the people living at that point in time. The simple fact of the matter is the world changes a lot. And the further back in time you go with your incarnations, the more it changes. If you're talking about prior ages in the earth and human development, even the laws of physics changed. So just because there's something waiting for you in the temple that was arranged for you previously, does not mean you are under any requirement to go along with it. Frequently, most people find this tied into what they consider their life's purpose. And this is a good thing. That said, you can change your mind. And if what those prior lives set up for you was simply too incongruent with what you're attempting to do now, you should. A lot of people consider this heresy and getting involved in changing someone's timeline or karma or whatever. But again, and I will be very clear about this, you only have the life you have right now. You will only have the life you have again in the future as another person. Your life in the past is finished. What this means is up to you, and how you care to comport yourself is up to you. But you have only now, and this is really important. Now again, that said, there may be some things waiting for you in there that are very useful. Reservoirs of power, gifts, books, stored information, you name it. Take a look around and see what you can find. That said, you need to apply whatever is in there to the life you have today. That's really the most valuable thing you can do. So we talked a little bit about what you can find inside your astral temple. Additionally, keep in mind, just because your astral temple is structured a certain way today does not mean it needs to remain structured that way in the future. So if you get in there and find there's something you don't like or an addition you want to make, do so. The simple fact of the matter is, this is all entirely up to you. Also keep in mind what you see and have access to inside your astral temple will have a lot to do with your beliefs in the here and now. And there may be parts of that temple that you don't have access to for many years. It's just the way it works. But it is in fact yours, so feel free to customize that any way you wish. Finally, I'm going to bring up something that I personally find a little confusing in all of this. You see, technically speaking, your astral body dies within a couple of weeks of the death of your physical body. It is powered by breath, and when the breath ends, so does the body. Your mental body continues to exist in perpetuity, and that tends to be the thing that reincarnates into a new body. That said, there's this thing known as necromancy. Necromancy is the magic of the dead. Interestingly enough, some part of us continues to exist and lead a parallel life after this physical body is gone. How that works exactly is not entirely clear to me, but it is something that you can explore. That said, there are a lot of quote-unquote creepy practices associated with necromancy, so if you choose to get involved with this, I would only utilize your own personal reincarnations or people you are directly related to by blood. But simply put, a part of us does seem to survive on the astral for an extended period of time, and I personally am not entirely sure what that means. So there's a little more information about how your astral temple works. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss the use of the wall in the 0-point method. A curious thing that everyone I've ever met who used the 0-point method found was that once they projected into their solar plexus, into their astral level temple, everybody described this flat surface on a wall at some part of the temple. Seemingly, it appeared to face north if they were questioned regarding what direction it was in. But the simple fact of the matter is, there is this odd, flat, sometimes rectangular surface that's quite large against the wall within their temple. The wall is your access point to the akasha via the solar plexus. And this is very important because it's this wall that ultimately allows you to project. What I personally do is I project a screen of akasha onto this wall and then project my consciousness into that akasha. Other people use different techniques, but everyone seems to use this wall as an access point into their subconscious or an access point into the deep astral and eventually the mental. This is very important to you. So once you project down into your temple, take a look around. In most cases, the location of this is glaringly obvious. In my case, it's an enormous fixture within this cave-type complex. But again, it tends to vary upon the individual. That said, directly in front of the wall, most people will usually find a variety of their prior incarnations standing around. Sometimes these things wish to talk to you, sometimes they simply wish to be left alone. A lot of times they look like statues. The fact of the matter is they're all you, or were you at one point in time. The only warning that I'll give about this is that some of these personalities are going to be a little spicy. The simple fact of the matter is, metaphysicians or long-term practitioners of the yogic and meditative arts tend to have rather sharp and profound personalities. If, again, you have gotten this far in the coursework, it's because you have most definitely done this previously. So keep in mind, you don't have to talk to these parts of yourself, but you can if you like. And keep in mind, some of these things might attempt to reassert themselves in the here and now. And that is something you need to stop immediately. This is your life. Your prior incarnation had their life. This is now yours. This is not theirs to hijack or boss around or tell you what to do. They can be used for information, and frequently they're quite helpful in this regard. But there are many stories about people learning very painful lessons associated with dealing with the past too much. The simple fact of the matter is, one of the reasons why we die is so we can let go of all of our baggage associated with that prior life. This astral level temple does a bit of an end run around this issue, and therein lies the danger. Just because you did something profound in a prior life doesn't mean you've done anything profound in this life. This is your opportunity to advance yourself, and if you hold to the past too strongly, you're not going to be able to do that. Now, these things tend to congregate around the wall as well. In my case, I see them kind of at the base of this giant kind of throne chamber thing. It doesn't matter. But the bottom line is, keep in mind, when you face the wall, there's going to be a lot of other things there that you can observe. And again, as we discussed in the last chapter, you can also add things, or if you really care to, remove things from it as well. But ultimately, this wall is where you're going to want to project your akasha in order to project out of your body. So just keep that in mind. It's an interesting feature that almost everybody reports seeing in one form or another, and it's usually glaringly obvious where it is. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss the transition to projecting from the head. All right, as was mentioned in the beginning of the course, the 0-point method is out-of-body projection for people who can't out-of-body project. That said, as you've probably found at this point in the 60 Skills curriculum, all of these individual skills, pore breathing, astral breathing, Akashic energy, the elements, all of these respond to a stress adaptation cycle. You do something, you get tired, you take a break, you recover, and then when you go revisit it again, you're better at it. Okay, that's the way this works as well. Now, I can't tell you at what point in time you're going to be able to project using the head as your center point of focus if you've traditionally had problems with this. All I can tell you is that everybody who's utilized the 0-point method of projection via the solar plexus eventually is able to project from the head. I would say practice with this method a couple times a week at a minimum, preferably daily, for a good 3 months. If you want, take 6 months. Then at that point, begin the ball above head, climbing up the ladder type technique of projecting out of the head to engage in mental wandering. At that point, you may find it very easy to do. And again, I'm not exactly sure why this happens, if it's the result of some development of energy, a more equal distribution of energy within the body, better elemental balance. It's really hard to say. But the bottom line is, after you utilize the 0-point method for anywhere from 3 to 6 months, you should have the ability to project from the head. Now, ultimately, when you're using the 0-point method, you can tune where you want to project your consciousness to. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But the fact of the matter is it's going to take at least 2 or 3 months for most people, if they've had a hard time with out-of-body projection from the head previously, to be able to do this after utilizing the 0-point method. Also keep in mind that there's an odd part of human psychology where if we fail at something repeatedly, some people develop this belief that they simply can't succeed. So out-of-body projection is one part the physics of learning how to do it, another part the technology of being able to do it, and a third very important part of belief that you can in fact do it. So if you've had a hard time with this previously, most people have created this negative feedback loop in the back of their head that says they can't do it at all. So because of the mechanics behind the 0-point method, it can override this. But it may take a while for that knowledge to kind of sink into you so you can begin using the head to separate the consciousness from the body directly. Now, when you do this, you don't tend to have the advantage of the astral temple. But it can be a little faster and results in you're not needing to use some intermediary steps. So there's some advantages there as well. That said, everybody who's used the 0-point method long enough seems to develop the ability to project from their body. And it's one of the main reasons why I recommend this technology to people. Just be patient is what I'm saying. So to sum up, if you're going to use the 0-point method to develop your ability to project your consciousness from your body using the head, it's probably going to take a good 3 to 6 months worth of work. That said, don't be surprised if it happens much quicker. I just can't promise anything in that regard. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss places you can go. The 0-point method is a great way of projecting your consciousness from the body. Primarily, we're using the wall by projecting our body into the Akasha via that. So this is an astral level segue into the Akasha. And this is where things get really interesting. By projecting your consciousness into the Akasha, you can then in turn tune where you want to go. Pretty cool. So keep in mind, you can use this form of out-of-body projection to explore anywhere in the physical world you care to go, anywhere in the astral world you care to go. You can project yourself directly into the realms of the Kabbalistic letters. You can project yourself into the planetary realms. You can even explore the kingdom of the dead via things like necromancy. Again, I'd hold off on that for a while. But the bottom line is, This wall projection into the Akasha allows you to tune your ultimate endpoint. And this is super important because by choosing where you choose to go to versus just randomly happening the way it typically does in dreams, this makes this a useful tool. And ultimately, this is the important part about metaphysics. People spend too much time on the meta and not enough on the physics. And the reality is these things are designed as tools with which you can enhance your life. Whether this is pursuing the enlightenment path or the chain of manifestation, or simply getting to know more about yourself and why you choose to do things. At the end of the day, it's this tuning part that becomes important. And this will be demonstrated in an exercise a little later on in the course. So keep in mind where you want to go when you use this technology. You can even write down a list of places you want to explore on a sheet of paper. And the more experience you have with this technology, the more useful it becomes to you. And I think this is ultimately the reason why a lot of schools used to use this technique. It was simply useful in working out the details of their day-to-day life. So keep in mind, you don't just have to go where you randomly project into. You can choose where you go, and the 0-point method is an excellent way to do this. Let us begin.